Hello, Tech Pros, episode 173.
Big data is a team sport, but you have to reach across the aisle, and it's a team sport in the sense that it involves both the business and the IT people together.
Welcome to the podcast where I chat with professionals who are getting the job done using technology 7 days a week. Each week, we start with Motivation Monday. Tuesday is about productivity, Wednesday, leadership, Thursday, technology, Friday, people and communication, Saturday, entrepreneurship, and Sunday, being unplugged. All right, let's get started. Hello, Tech Pros. This is Chad Bostic, and I'm excited to introduce our featured guest today, Bill Schmarzo. Happy Friday, Bill.
And a happy Friday to you, Chad.
Are you ready for the weekend?
Oh, gosh. Who's not, right? Who's not?
Absolutely. Who is not? Well, I'll tell you, some of those entrepreneurs who are, working all weekend regardless of what day of the week it is, some of those guys are like, you know what? It's just another day to me. It's Entrepreneurship Saturday. It just means another day to hustle. But we love it no matter what.
I find that sometimes my best work I do on early Saturday and Sunday mornings. It's just you're not disturbed by the work trudgery that comes in all the time. So while I love Fridays, I actually love the fact that it gives me some free time on Saturday and Sunday mornings to kind of bang out things that I really need to get done and want to do.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about some of the things that you want to do and some of the things that you have done. So for the audience, Bill Schmarzo is the CTO of EMC's Big Data Consulting Practice and is a frequent industry speaker, blogger, and professor at the University of San Francisco School of Management, as well as an author. Schmarzo wrote Big Data MBA, Driving Business Strategies with Data Science, and Big Data, Understanding How Data Powers Big Business. So, Bill, I love that you're here with me this Friday, this People Friday on Hello Tech Pros, and you are a big data expert, big data consulting practice CTO, chief technology officer. You know, sometimes we get so down in the weeds on the data and the technology and the things, but you're here with me on a People Friday episode, and I feel that you may feel the same way that I do, that sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Well, in the big data space, I think that, by the way, I do need to make one correction, maybe a couple here. One is I am not an expert. I think anybody who says they're an expert, especially in a space like big data that's growing and morphing so quickly, what does expert mean? I'm just very fortunate I have a lot of experience. The nature of my job puts me in front of customers all the time. I'm on the road probably 3 or 4 days a week, spending time with customers, and so it gives me a bit of a unique view of what's going on in the marketplace, because I'm at the front lines working with customers who are trying to figure out this big data creature. And Chad, I love the fact that we're going to talk about people, because I know that in the big data conversation, we seem to get ourselves all wound around the axle regarding the technology. And be honest with you, what we're finding is that organizations that are successful with big data, they understand the technology, but what they've more importantly done is they've addressed a lot of the cultural or people issues. That is, how do I get people engaged in the process so that I'm delivering the analytics in a way that is actionable to my business stakeholders? So the cultural aspect and the people aspects of big data, in my humble opinion, are 100 times more important than the technology aspects.
Oh, Bill, I couldn't agree more. I mean, in every big change management situation that I've been through in business, in life, right? People just need to know, why are we doing this? What is this big data thing? What is this cloud thing? What is this internet thing? What is this PC thing, right? What are the things that, why are we doing all of this technology? Why are we implementing it? Why is this technology the new flavor of the week or the new methodology that we have to work, right? Why is this important to me? And what's it going to do for the company? And why do I care, right? And that process of getting everybody fired up on, this is going to be killer. Like, this is going to make or break our industry, not just our individual jobs or our company. So I love the fact that we're talking about the culture of the organization and getting everybody aligned on that same vision.
Yeah, the challenge we find is that in order to, I'll steal a phrase from Stephen Covey, who wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, begin with an end in mind. Pretty simple. right? Pretty simple stuff. But yet people seem to struggle because they begin with the technology. They grab Hadoop and they grab some servers and storage and they throw some random data on there and they hire some really smart data scientists and they wait for magic to happen. And they wait for magic to happen, and they wait for magic, and it doesn't happen. And so for us, we find that the starting point has to be around a key business initiative that by default requires the IT and the business people to be locked arm in arm to understand what it is they're trying to solve. So it isn't like that business has to be involved in the process. We say that business isn't just in the boat. They're at the front of the boat with the IT organization, jointly trying to figure out where and how do I leverage data and analytics to power the business? Because the question that organizations are struggling with, if the one question that seems to permeate everybody we talk to is they don't know how effective they are at leveraging data and analytics to power the business. It's a business conversation. So you have to have that tight alignment between the business and IT at the very front to make sure you're building the right things, to make sure you're loading the right data sources, to make sure you're using the right analytic models, to make sure you're buying the right technologies and building the right architecture. If you don't have that focus up front, everything else you do at the end is just random.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the things that I've seen is sometimes the business partners, even the IT folks, the technical folks themselves, don't know what is possible. Like, what questions could we answer if we had these tools in place? What questions could we answer if we structured our data a certain way or was able to analyze it in a certain way? Because we have told each other no so many times in the past, right? If we go back a decade or 20 years ago, it's like, well, no, that's not possible. We don't have the computing power to do that. No, that's not possible because the tool sets are just not around. So sometimes it's great to... Sometimes it might be great to bring in Hadoop or bring in some tools and solutions, or at least experts in these tools, and talk about, okay, what kind of problems are other people solving? What kind of problems are getting done? Now, now we know what's available. What is in the art of possible? Now, what's the specific thing that we need in our company to drive us forward?
So, Chad, the one thing that we do in our engagements is an envisioning exercise, and it ends up being about a 2 to 4 week engagement with our customers to really address that art of the possible question. How can I leverage data and analytics to power my business? What do I need to do? And we find that this process is much more about unleashing the creative juices. And what we'll do as part of this process is we grab 5 or 6 gigabytes of the client's data, and we do some illustrative analytics around the problem they're trying to go after to show them not only how they can leverage their data and advanced analytics to sort of uncover new customer, product, operational, and market insights that they could act on, but it also helps to fuel the creative thinking about what other data sources might be out there that I could use. Right? By the way, that's a really important phrase, the might phrase. So if you think about what data science really is, and it's part of my role as a teacher at USF, is I got to be able to summarize concepts down to, my goal is 20 words or less. So if I think about what data science is about identifying those variables and metrics that might be better predictors of performance. And so as you go through this process and you bring the business people into this process, they are the best source for identifying those variables and metrics that might be better predictors of performance, right? And in these envisioning engagements, we go through a process of helping the business stakeholders to think like a data scientist. We're not going to turn them into data scientists. That would be very wasteful, but they understand the business very, very well, better than anybody in the data science side. And so how do I effectively get the business people to think like a data scientist so they can have these creative moments of thinking about other data sources they might want to go get? Social media, building permits, clinical studies, patent filings, political registrations. I mean, there's just a ton of data sources out there that organizations could go get. And so we really want to unleash the creative thinking across the organization of trying to identify those variables and metrics that might be better predictors of performance. Because if you don't have enough might moments, you'll never have any breakthrough moments. And so it's really all about getting people to feel more comfortable with the idea of having ideas. And the word might is a very powerful word because it's the license for you to be wrong. That's not a normal concept or approach or appreciated in many organizations. The idea of wrong is bad and for most organizations, but we know from growing up as children that we learned many of our lessons by being wrong. I mean, we learned how to ride a bicycle. We fell down many times. At least I did.
Yeah.
Right? Swinging a golf club, you clunked a lot of balls in the wrong places because you learned. And so we have to, as part of this big data conversation, we have to focus on the cultural issues that allow us to unleash this creative thinking by, as you said, attacking this art of the possible and helping people to start realizing that they've got blinders on and they need to drop those blinders because there's such a wealth of data out there and all the different tools and technologies that help me to mine that data to really uncover new insights about my customers, my products, my markets, my operations.
So, Bill, when you go into these engagements, these 2 to 4 week engagements with the envisioning exercises, and you're really going through the art of possible, trying to take the blinders off of people, what is the transformation that you normally see or that you have seen in organizations that are going through this exercise, right? So, where do they start? What notions do they have about themselves, about data, about solving these problems, and then what do they realize at the end of it?
So most people start this process very skeptical, and as you know from my background, I'm a long-time data warehouse BI person, and I did that for almost 25 years. And I think what's happened in that space is we overpromised and underdelivered, and in the process of doing that, we really turned a lot of people off to the organization's ability to really leverage, analyze, and get value out of data. I mean, just ask somebody to say, hey, I want to build a data warehouse. It's like, all right, $6 million, that's 6 months and $2 million. Thank you very much, right?
Yep.
Nothing is fast. Everything, and if you want to add a new data source to your data warehouse, it's a major undertaking. So we have, by virtue of what we've done over the past 20, 30 years, we've taught the business people to be skeptical of our ability to get them data more quickly. And so when this process starts, we always start this process by, first off, we have to pick a problem we're going after. Maybe it's customer retention. Maybe it's quality of care in a hospital. Maybe it's student performance in a public school system. Whatever it might be, you have to pick a problem that the business users find is important. And in many cases, we look for things we call strategic business initiatives. It might be in an annual report where somebody has said, we're going to attack this problem. We're going to try to grow same-store sales by 7% over the next year. By golly, let's focus on that, right? So we start with a problem that's important to the business. This is not like we're going to move to the cloud or we're going to modernize our data center. Business people don't give a crap about that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Right? That's not business initiatives to them. They've got a problem. So we start there and we interview them the very first 2 days we're on board, and we spend time with the key business stakeholders to really understand and focus in on the decisions they're trying to make in support of that business initiative. Not the questions. The questions will come later. We find that we focus on the decisions, it gives us this common linkage point between the business people and the data scientists, so that the data scientists know what decision they're trying to optimize, the business people tell you what decision they're trying to make, and you create that immediate linkage or synergy between those two organizations. So you start this process and there's skepticism. They like this idea we're focused on a problem they care about. They can kind of grasp the concept of decisions, but it really doesn't come to fruition until the actual our vision workshops capstone with a half-day visioning engagement where we bring everybody back together. We show them the results of what we've done. We help them. We take them through a bunch of brainstorming processes. We show them the art of the possible, illustrative analytics. And what's interesting about that part of the process is you will literally start seeing the light bulbs go off. And what happens, what think about creativity, when people see something and they realize they can have, we've unleashed their creativity. Creativity is a contagious event. One person has an idea, then 3 people have an idea, then 7 people have an idea, and everybody feels that they can contribute. You've unleashed the power of the organization. Now, there's a really important rule when we do these vision workshops, and that rule is all ideas are worthy of consideration. That is, when somebody suggests an idea, I don't care how awful it may sound, you're always write it down and are willing to consider it. You want people to be unafraid, to have that ability to say, this might be a good idea. You know what? The data science team will tell you which ideas are good or bad. They're going to run all their big algorithms. They're going to bring all kinds of data and do all that data munging and enrichment. They will tell you which variables are actually useful and which ones are not. But unleashing that creative thinking on the business side is key to allow people to all contribute. And again, that rule that all ideas are worthy of consideration is really important. So there's no rule I ever read, by the way, that said that the best ideas only come from senior management.
Right.
What we find is the best ideas come from the front line. Nurses, parole officers, police officers, teachers, mechanics, engineers, the people who on a day-to-day basis are doing the jobs. They're the ones who have the best ideas, and they're the ones we want to figure out how to tap what they know, their experience, their inclinations, and bring that into the process.
Yeah, I think sometimes we get so wrapped up in these command and control environments, right? These command and control cultures where it all kind of rolls downhill, where the big bosses say, hey, these are the decisions that we're trying to make. This is what we want you to focus on. And unfortunately, in some organizations, it's just kind of like, okay, we take the advice and direction like word for word from senior management and try to implement it, as opposed to bringing those ideas from the lines, like you said, because those guys and gals know exactly what's happening, right? They have intimate knowledge with the data in a way that really affects their emotions on a day-to-day level, right? So they know when bad things happen, like how it's going to affect their day, whether it's customer service or whether it's the bottom line or whatever, as opposed to upper management. Sometimes they're just looking at a report which aggregates a lot of the stuff together, and they're missing out some of the really, really important details.
Amen. In fact, one of the things we tell a lot of our clients that the big data is not about big. Big data is about small. How do you gather enough insights on every individual customer, patient, parolee, student, right, operator, whatever it is? You want to learn as much as possible about the individual. That when you this aggregated data that we've been taught to learn to work with in a data warehouse world, aggregated data is the anti-data science. I don't want aggregated. I want the detailed transactions. I want the detailed test results. I want the detailed wellness reports and the vital stats on my patients. We need to think about getting the conversation down to the conversation of small, not big.
Yeah, I love that, because then we're not aggregating things together. We're not making assumptions. We're not combining, pros and cons together and come out with a wash. We're looking at every individual element, every individual parameter, and looking at those across each individual situation, each individual event, each individual person, and then we can look at the sum of the whole parts and say, aha, this is what we can determine out of this.
Yeah, it's about that detailed transaction to build these what we call analytic profiles at the individual level, so that we understand every person, every customer, every patient's natural behavioral tendencies, their inclinations, their patterns, the things that propensities, all the things that make them who they are. You have to get down to the individual. If, by the way, your goal is to serve the individual. Now think about a hospital, right? We have aggregated data about healthcare, but every patient is different. Got different backgrounds, experiences, health conditions, genealogy, and DNA. Everybody is an individual. So if you're trying to make decisions about the individual at the aggregate level, you are at best going to have on average results. If you want to get better than on average, you got to get down to the detailed individual.
Okay, so let's break this up. I think we've got two separate things that I want to touch on. One is the culture, right, of how we get these ideas to the table and really embrace them and get all the ideas from all the people across the organization and bubble them all up. And then the second one is, how do we get that level of detail on each individual thing that we're tracking, whether it's a person, a place, a thing, or whatever. So let's start with the culture side. How do we get those ideas, foster those ideas, and create that culture of every idea is important and every idea is worthy of consideration?
It's hard. So it really starts at the top, where you've got an organization that really, for lack of a better term, respects the opinions and insights of all people. I will tell you right now that most large organizations, that's not true. When we do these vision workshop engagements, we by far have the most success with, I would say, small and medium-sized organizations. And I think what's happened in those organizations, they're not so big that people have huge fiefdoms. When you get into the large, Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies, these organizations have fiefdoms. People, their lives, their pay, their whole livelihood depends on how well their fiefdom does. And sharing of data and insights does not happen easily. When I walk into an organization and I see data silos today is less a technology issue today than and it's more of a cultural issue that people don't want to share. So if I'm trying to, for example, in a casino, trying to calculate how valuable every player is to me, not only what their current value is, but what their projected value might be, I need to look across the entire experience of the casino, slots and tables and the spa and retail and the hotel and food and beverage and I need to have a complete view. However, if I've got these siloed views of these people, I'm not going to have the accurate projection of these people. We see this, by the way, in financial services, where you've got a group that owns, checking account, a group that owns savings, a group that owns the IRA, and a group that owns, loans and mortgages. They don't share data. And again, in our world, with the advent of this thing called a data lake, we don't need to have data silos anymore. We don't need them from a technology perspective. But when you have them, that tells you got cultural problems. And so, how do you change something like that? I tell you what, I can't help you. I can't help you. Right? There's not enough. I don't have enough years left in my life to go do that. But organizations that are being successful are the ones who, at the very top, have said, "This is something we must do." Either as an organization, they feel like they have to do it from a trouble perspective, right? The world is shifting around them, and they better move quickly because they're not going to be relevant in 3 or 4 years. Or they see a huge growth opportunity to unleash the creative aspects of the entire organization, to really free up that innovative thinking across everybody in the organization. So, a long answer to your question is, it's hard if the senior most people in the organization don't respect and appreciate the value that everybody could bring to the process.
Yeah, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it, right? If it was easy, then all big corporations would have these massive, these massive events where they're just ripping their business down and starting over and big change management all the time. But when you optimize for efficiency, when you're optimizing for just getting gradual, small changes, small optimizations out of your organization, then it's really, really hard to say, okay, let's tear down what we've optimized over the last 30 years and let's change the culture so that we can bring everybody together, bring all the data together, and make better decisions. I mean, that's got to be tough for anybody to do in those situations.
Yeah, I think because marginal improvements set you up for ultimate disintermediation. If you're only marginally improving your business, there's somebody else out there, some other company, who is taking leaps and bounds to take you out. And we see it all the time. We see companies all the time taking people out, right? When's the last time you saw a Blockbuster Video? Oops, gone, right?
Yep.
Or Barnes and Noble, oops, gone, right? All these organizations that have been who are very successful in their day, and history is full of these organizations. Part of the class I teach, we talk about death of organizations and why organizations die, and they don't die because they get bad people. They die because management is so concerned about making sure they don't shake up what they currently have and feel like the marginal improvements are good enough. Well, good enough doesn't get you to great. And so it's a challenge at the senior most level to really put in place a culture that respects everybody and is willing to consider what everybody has suggested and it might change. You might end up eating the old of your business, right? You might end up getting rid of parts of your business that no longer service where you want to go. So it's very interesting times, and I believe that this big data conversation has accelerated those points. We're seeing organizations across a number of different industries where business model disruption and customer relationship disintermediation are happening all the time. And some of the smart organizations are really worried about it, and they realize it's not business as usual.
So, Bill, in just a moment, I want to dive down into what we can do if we're in this position at our company, or if we're a senior management at our company, where we're like, okay, we see this, we appreciate this, we want to be the kind of folks who are more nimble, who are more agile, who are changing directions and adapting to the evolving circumstances. So let's talk about that in just a moment. But first, we're going to take a quick break and thank our sponsors. This episode of Hello Tech Pros is sponsored by Minio Cloud Storage. Minio is a cloud object storage server for developers and DevOps written in Go. The Go programming language is the emerging language of choice for modern cloud infrastructure projects, and it allows Minio to be highly concurrent and lightweight. Minio is Amazon S3 compatible, built with microstorage architecture in mind, but at its heart, Minio is simple, scalable, and supported by a passionate developer and user community. In episode 89 of Hello Tech Pros, I talked with A.B. Periasamy, one of the founders of Minio, about the importance of community support and recruiting software developers who are as passionate about their product's code as artists are of their art. Check out that episode at hellotechpros.com/89 and check out Minio Cloud Storage at minio.io. That's minio.io. Okay, we're back with Bill Schmarzo, or the Schmarz as he's known in certain circles, who is the CTO of EMC's Big Data Consulting Practice. We've been talking to Bill about, in very, very large organizations, Fortune 100 organizations, sometimes it's hard to implement this change management process to get everyone to really buy in on the fact that we don't need data silos. We don't need organizational silos. We all need to put all of our data together in one big, nice little lake and work on common problems that are going to further the organization's benefit as a whole. That's hard to do. But in our case, Bill, in our imaginary company that we're helping here right now, we know that we need to break down these silos. We know that we need to bring together a culture of people that we can get ideas from across the board, right? From the line individuals all the way up into senior management. So we've decided that these are good things and we want to do it. Now, what's next? What are the next steps that we need to do in order to use big data for the overall benefit of the organization?
So let's say that you're somebody who's not a senior manager and you've seen the power of what big data can do, and you're a believer. Okay. And you're willing, by the way, to risk your neck on it, right? That you see that there's such a compelling story here that it's worth the gamble. And by the way, if this place doesn't do what I suggest anyway, I'm better off moving on someplace else as it is. So the keys to success, I think, is grassroots efforts work with some key constraints around it. Number one, the grassroots effort has to focus in on something that's important to the business. Bringing in and building an impressive model that shows something that's happening in the business, but it isn't relevant to the business. It's not strategic. It's not actionable. It's not material. That's our SAM test, strategic, actionable, material. It doesn't pass the SAM test. No one cares. So you have to focus in on something that's important to the business. And again, if you're a public company, the annual report is chock full of them. The analyst calls every quarter that your senior management team has is chock full of opportunities to apply big data. Big data doesn't fail because of lack of opportunities. For most organizations, it fails because they have too many. And organizations suffer. There's two things that large organizations, in fact, all organizations do really poorly. They don't prioritize and they don't focus. And so if you are a grassroots believer, you got to start off by focusing on something that's important to the business. We're going to solve this problem. Then you have to reach across the aisle and make sure that you have somebody on the business side, or if you're on the business side, somebody on the technology side who's willing to tackle this with you. You've got to build a team. Big data is a team sport. And so if you can find somebody on the business side who's a friendly, who sees the potential. You may have had to do a lot of mercenary selling to them and showing them stuff and getting them sort of wound up. But once you've got them on board, then you've got the team that allows you to move forward to show what this could do. And so this grassroots effort starts off with one person with a passion, with an idea, with a focus. They find somebody in the business side who's a friendly, who also has that same belief or can get there, and slowly but surely start building out this team. The one thing that's been true throughout history is that success breeds success. If you're successful in doing this for one problem, for one area, for one part of the business, you will catch the attention of other people. And pretty soon the bandwagon term exists for a reason, right? Mm-hmm. People jump on the bandwagon when they see success, and now your problem will transition from one of of targeting my next opportunity to now I need to figure out how to prioritize and how to focus. But as somebody who's a believer who may not be in a senior management position, you lead from the front. You create success. You build a team. You focus on something that's important, and you help people just understand and envision throughout that process of how data and analytics can change the way they do business.
Yeah, I think what you said there is so critical, because sometimes we start with these initiatives like all hands on deck. This is a huge business priority, huge business problem. So we're going to involve way too many people, way too many ideas in the early initial like prototypes or proof of concepts for this, for working on this problem or working with this technology. And then we end up getting something that's very muddled, right? Like you said,
Right.
we're not focused. We have not really prioritized the one decision, the one problem, the core problem that we want to focus on. And so we got too many cooks in the kitchen, all trying to stir the pots at the same time, and nothing's going on. So let's start with that critical team that's very small, that's tight-knit, but that has all the legs and hands that they need to have to get the work done. And then once they show some success, man, you'll have volunteers coming out of the woodworks to want to jump on that bandwagon.
Hey, Chad, you said something there I thought was really key. Focus on one decision. Figure out what decision is really important. What decision has high business impact as well as a high feasibility of success over a 9 to 12 month window. By the way, we use that 2x2 matrix that has value on one side and feasibility on the other to help us to prioritize. We want to prioritize and focus on that one decision that has both high value and high feasibility of success. If you focus on that one decision, if you pick the right decision to go after that has value and a high probability of success, and you focus on that, that becomes very driving. To me, for example, I think about the power of one decision. I think about the power of Uber, right? When Uber got started, what did Uber do really well? Well, Uber focused on one decision that I, as a customer, had to make: how to get from where I am to where I want to be. Single decision. And they created a really cool mobile app and a cool interface and a rating system and everything they built around that, but it's all around that one decision. So if you, as a grassroots effort, can find that one decision to focus in on, can build sponsorship and linkage with the business around that one decision, because if you can focus on the one decision, then it'll help you to figure out how I drive that into action. How do I operationalize that? And at some point, it'll help you to figure out what's the ROI for that. How much of an analytic lift can I drive by improving that decision? And what's the analytic lift, or what's the ROI associated with that analytic lift?
Love it. So, Bill, if we can make one decision here, or if you could sum us up with one final words of wisdom for our audience here to wrap us all up, what would that be? And then share the best way that we can connect with you.
So I'm going to take liberty here since I'm speaking. I'm going to give you two.
Awesome.
And I think they're related. One is big data is a team sport. But you have to reach across the aisle in a team sport in the sense that it involves both the business and the IT people together. And closely related to that is this idea that creativity is contagious. If you can put in place the right environment where people can feel safe making mistakes, you will get all kinds of creative ideas. And again, all ideas are worthy of consideration. So how best to reach me? Well, I'm on Twitter as Schmarzo. That's always a good way to reach me. If you go to LinkedIn, I'm the only William Schmarzo or Bill Schmarzo on LinkedIn. Please reach out to me. Those are probably the best ways to do it. Because as you may or may not know, Chad, EMC right now is going through kind of a major transition. We were acquired by Dell, and we're going through the process of getting everything all lined up. So if I shared it with my email address, it might be invalid by the time you got it. So probably the best way is Twitter. Reach out to Schmarzo, Schmarzo. Love to hear from you. If you have questions, comments, please reach out. I love to have conversation. The reason why I love conversation is because I learn what people are thinking of, what their opinions are. I learn from other people.
Awesome. And me too. That's exactly why I started this podcast, because having conversations with people, kind of take it back to this People Friday, right? This concept of let's share ideas, let's get all the ideas on the table. The biggest increases, the biggest steps in my career have happened because I sat down and had conversations with people instead of just worrying about the technology. I started having conversations with people like Bill, right? Offline, just in my organization or outside of my organization. Say, hey, dude, you're so productive here. Well, how do you do it? Or you have so many great ideas and people are listening to you. How do you do it? So it's awesome thing to get together with people and just start cultivating relationships, cultivating conversations. And Bill, I appreciate you so much for joining me on Hello Tech Pros today. I really value this conversation and these ideas that we've been sharing.
Thanks, Chad, for having me, and I look forward to hearing from you as well as from the listeners.
Awesome. Tech Pros, if you're in the situation where you are looking to reach out across the aisle, but it's scary, do it anyway. Do it anyway. Reach out, develop some relationships, talk to some folks. You will find some like-minded folks who share your passion for improving the business and breaking the status quo, trying some new things, experimenting a little bit in a small, safe environment. You know, you don't have to spend millions of dollars and years of effort to put some of this stuff together. You know, do some stuff over the weekend and start from there and get some buy-in. And once you show some success, as Bill said, then you'll see a lot more people wanting to sign up and build onto that idea. You've been listening to Bill Schmarzo, and I'm Chad Bostic. And until next time, take care. The show notes page for this episode can be found at hellotechpros.com/173. Do you use Slack for team communication? Join the Hello Tech Pros Slack channel at hellotechpros.com/Slack. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review, subscribe to this channel, and check back tomorrow. This has been People Friday, but tomorrow my featured guest and I discuss entrepreneurship. On Sunday, being unplugged. Monday, motivation. Tuesday, productivity. Wednesday, leadership. Thursday, technology. And then back again on Friday to talk people and communication. And I'll talk to you tomorrow.